Mr. President.
Mr. President.
It's the pleasure of Senator Cayetano.
Mr. President, before the motion is acted upon by our Honorable Majority Leader and members of the Senate, will the gentleman yield to some questions for interpellations?
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is very serious allegations. And since I think my colleague in the Senate na diretsuhan niya na sinabi, and the Bible says the truth shall set us free. So that means that either we have a mass murderer as a president or we have mass liars as his critics. Because the two cannot coexist with each other. And I thought that's why we have the committee system, so that we can ferret that out in the committee, because the presentation today here was actually in violation of our rules. Because when a matter is already referred to a committee and being discussed and heard, it is for that committee, unless we are asking the plenary to reverse. Having said that, it is the right of the gentleman to bring these things up. I didn't want to be accused of gagging him or not allowing him to speak. But I ask for his patience. I know this is a very emotional issue for all Filipinos. But as he is doing his job, may he allow me to do my job. My first question, Mr. President, is Your Honor, Senator Trillanes. Have you experienced a custodial investigation or a preliminary investigation? By any chance? No?
Yes, Mr. President. Quite a lot, as far as I can recall.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, being an experienced senator, and I forgot that you passed through that, no? Because being a political science student and a lawyer, we were required to observe. So like sa akin po, sa Fiskalya ng Manila. And when and I wanted to point it out, the point he was making about the affidavit and sworn statement, nasabi kasi nung gentleman that English kasi to, kaya hindi naintindihan. Is it correct, Your Honor, Mr. President, Senator Trillanes, that sa custodial investigation, sa PI, and when the NBI, police, or fiscals talk to the witnesses, they are talked in their native language, not in English? Hindi po ba?
I wouldn't have an idea.
Yes, that is the standard rule in the preliminary investigation, because if not, that will not only be a violation of their rights, it will be a criminal case against those who are taking his statement, because it will be perjury on their side, because they will be putting words in the mouth of the witness. So my next question, sir, have you read the affidavit of Mr. Motobato submitted to the NBI?
Yes, Mr. President.
Did you notice anything about why it was in English?
Well, I believe it's a standard report of... anyway, let me just correct the gentleman that it is not technically an affidavit. It was a sworn statement, Mr. President.
That's one and the same thing, but I'll not argue with him there. Let me just read the first paragraph.
But Mr. President, it may be one in the same thing for lawyers, but for a grade 1 student, let us not assume that it is so,
Well,
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's a good point. I will go to that later. Sworn statement of Edgar Matobato E. Bernal given before Agent Eugene Javier IV in the presence of Agent Oliver de Rivera and witnessed by Joselita Abarquez here in the Office of the Anti-Organized and Transnational Crime Division, AOTCD, Death Investigation Unit, DIU, National Bureau of Investigation, Taft, this 4th day of September 2014. Note, Mr. President, hindi po to custodial investigation dahil yung witness ang nag-volunteer na siya ay magse-state witness at siya ang magbibigay ng kanyang alam. This isn't, hindi ito yung napapanood natin sa mga crime telenovelas or sa series sa TV na, o bakit wala kang abogado, o bakit you have the right to remain silent. He chose to speak. What does the first paragraph said? The following questions were asked in the dialect known to the affiant, and thereafter truly and accurately translated in the English language. So, Mr. President, hindi po totoo yung sinabi ni Senator Trillanes kanina na dahil English, hindi naiintindihan nung affiant or nung ni Mr. Matobato. Sapagkat in-explain to sa kanya, may witnesses, Binisaya, Tinagalog, at okay. Second point, Mr. President. Senator Trillanes, are you aware where this affidavit went after the NBI?
Mr. President, this representation is willing to submit and accede and concede to the point of the gentleman so that we can expedite the whole thing, because we have a pending motion that the body needs to address,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
But, Mr. President, Senator Trillanes tried to paint to the public that Mr. Matobato is credible, and I'd like the chance to engage him in a polite and a sober discussion that I respectfully and humbly disagree with his presentation. That was his assessment. It's not my assessment. But instead of giving my assessment and standing on a question of personal privilege, pabayaan natin ang publiko ang makinig kung ano ang tama, sino tama, at sila mag-judge kay Mr. Matobato. Having said that, sir, I ask you if you know where it went, because it went to the Department of Justice that accepted his affidavit. That kept him in the witness protection program. And that affidavit was partially used to file the cases, which was dismissed. And I'd like to ask Senator Trillanes, are you aware that the case filed by Mr. Matobato against the 5 policemen for torture, arbitrary detention, violation of human rights of a detained person were dismissed by the DOJ during the time of President Aquino? Are you aware, sir?
Mr. President, again, I am wondering where all of these questions would lead to, because if the gentleman intends to test the credibility of Mr. Matobato, then I am the wrong person to ask. I have presented the findings that we gathered based on our limited capability, and I presented my case to the floor. I have presented the findings that we gathered based on our limited capability, and I presented my case to the floor. So it's up to the people, and especially the senators, to decide on the matter. Because I'm not the one going to testify, or I wasn't the one who testified or made allegations against President Duterte, Mr. President.
I beg to disagree, Mr. President. In this hall, Senator Trillanes chose upon himself to make representations and make conclusions that Mr. Matobato is credible, that there are no inconsistencies. So when someone stands up to interpolate, it is to test at either our prejudice or our wisdom. Meaning, kung ang initial tingin ko, mali ka, sir, and then nasagot mo ako ng tama, edi I will admit, mali pala ako. At tama ka pala, at credible pala si Mr. Matobato. But, kung hindi masagot, or mali ang sagot, or mali ang ano, then we expect that we'll have at least a consensus. You may leave this hall believing that he's credible. I may leave this hall believing that he is not credible. But at least the fellow senators will have the benefit of both sides, and not only the side of Senator Trillanes. And the public will also get to know. Anyway, Mr. President, on June 30, 2016, the day the President took his oath, dinismiss po ng DOJ. Hindi po DOJ ni President Duterte yan. It was through Assistant State Prosecutor Charlie Guhit. Which brings me to the next statement,
Mr.
the next
President,
question.
just an interjection on that point. May we, does the gentleman know which part of the day on June 30 was this case dismissed?
Sir President,
Because on June 30 in the afternoon, President Duterte already assumed as President of the Republic.
let's find out, Mr. President.
So
but
the
my no-
gentleman apparently is not aware also of these details, which is very essential to the
Yes.
whole point that he's making,
Mr. President, being a lawyer, I know for a fact that the DOJ Secretary cannot dismiss it by himself. All these papers and all these recommendations are on the desk of the Secretary from layers and layers. That's why I mentioned it's through Assistant State Prosecutor Charlie Guhit. In fact, Mr. President, I was in Malacanang. Senator Drilon here was also in Malacanang. You were in Malacanang during the oath-taking, and the oath-taking of the DOJ Secretary was still after. But for fairness, we will go there and look at it. But I stand by my word, Mr. President, that my belief is that all of these assessments made from the lower prosecutors to the state prosecutor to the DOJ was done during the Aquino administration. Which leads me, Mr. President, to the question that I'd like to ask the Honorable Senator Trillanes. Do you know the doctrine or the theory about half-truths? Have you heard about this?
In as much as I would want to be schooled by those legal jargons, but I wouldn't want to waste the time of our colleagues, Mr. President. I believe we can schedule another whole-day seminar if the senator would wish to school me on legal matters, but the issue remains addressed, Mr. President. The motion is presented on the floor, and we have yet to decide on the matter, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I do not wish to school anyone. It's not for me. In fact, I approached some of the senators here to help mentor me during this time because I'm used to being in the opposition. There's much for me to learn. But I bring up the doctrine or the concept of half-truths because this is what criminals use, and this is what people na naninira or people who want to destroy credibility of others use. What is the concept of half-truths? So I'll give you an example, Mr. President, just to continue. No? It'll just take me 1 minute, Your Honor. If Senator Pimentel, our Senate President, is in front of me, Senator Trillanes, and I are here, and then I say, can I have 1 minute para mag-CR? Then I get to the CR, but katabi po ng CR sa likod, may nagsaksakan po. No? At meron pong patay. Then I come back here. No? So if Senator Villanueva stands up and says, Alan was in the session hall, umihi siya, and then sinaksak niya yung Mr. X siya pumatay, it is a half-truth. In fact, it's 2/3 truth because 1, I am here. 2, umihi ako. I don't know why he knows that. But 3, hindi totoo na siya ay pinatay ko. I say that because the presentation of Senator Trillanes were full of half-truths. Wala naman pong pinag-usapan na meron po talagang 1993 bombing ng katedral at ng moske. And yung mga ninarrate ni Mr. Matubato, pwede niyang basahin sa dyaryo yon tapos dugtungan. That goes to my second question, my third question, Senator Trillanes, Mr. President. The nature of the testimony has to be or cannot be hearsay. So may I ask the good senator, how much of the testimony, in his opinion, of Mr. Matubato was hearsay?
Well, let me address the first point first, Mr. President, because the gentleman has a tendency to jump from one subject to the other. Okay, on the first point that he mentioned regarding the doctrine of half-truths being used by criminals and liars, I would concede and accept the argument of the senator because apparently he may be following the doctrine of it takes one to know one. Now, let me go to the next point. He mentioned that Mr. Matubato didn't say anything about the 1993 bombing of the cathedral. Now, I direct him to page 16 of the transcript of the September 15, 2016 hearing of the Committee on Justice. And I quote, "Oo, rebel returnees at saka pulis, nagkwan na kami, yon mga opisyal na namin. 1993, binomba ang katedral ng Davao City, yung simbahan. Umorder naman si Mayor Duterte na masakerin yung mga moske ng mga Muslim. Now, just this point would highlight the example that it is the gentleman who is practicing that doctrine of half-truths being used by criminals and liars. So, there's so many of that. That's why we needed to present the truth in this earlier presentation, because precisely the gentleman twisted so many information, so many facts during the last hearing. Again, Mr. President, if the gentleman is opposing, then I believe it is time to divide the House.
I'm not
Mr. President.
opposing yet. I ask if he's willing to be interpellated. Kung tatakbo siya, ayaw na niya. Kung ayaw niya magpa-interpellate, that's his call. But usually, Mr. President, because this is a hall of gentlemen and ladies, in the same patience that we sat here and listened to his presentation, usually, the senators also patiently ask for questions, receive the questions, answer them. Actually, Mr. President, it's quite parliamentary to say it takes one to know one, but I'll not take any offense. I'm used to that kind of, even now sa cellphone, araw-araw, there's a brigade to curse, etc., me, and etc., and it's okay. But I'll just follow his logic. It takes one to know one. So he says, I'm a person of half-truth. That's why huli ko si Matubato na nag-half-truth. So siya na rin nag-admit na si Matubato is using half-truths. Following his own logic. I will sacrifice my own credibility. If he is saying it takes one to know one, so, and I know that half-truths ang ginagamit ni Mr. Matubato, so he's admitting that his own witness, or the witness that he stood up to protect or to explain, expound. But having said that, Mr. President, hindi po ako ang testigo. So if I use half-truths or if I use misleading, leading questions as a senator to get to the truth, that is allowed. Yung pong hindi allowed, yung witness na hindi niya sasabihin ang katotohanan. Bakit po? If you notice, Mr. President, and I see the famous Secretary Barbo right in front of me, he's famous during the impeachment of of a former president, where he again and again said, if you remember that, Secretary Barbo, do you swear to tell the truth? The whole truth and nothing but the truth. Because the reality is, you can say a half-truth. I can tell my wife, umuwi ako ng alas 12. Diba? Hindi ako tumingin sa babae. Pero nakapikit pala ako nung kasama ko yung babae. So, hindi whole truth yon, half-truth yon. But I ask that, Mr. President, in coordination with the question of hearsay, with the patience of Senator Trillanes, I didn't jump to a next. It's connected. Again and again, it has been proven. I also have my presentation, but I will not bore you with it. I will submit it to the Committee on Justice. And the good Senator Gordon has instructed us not to lecture the members. He has instructed us that if we have observations, we submit it to the committee, we discuss it among ourselves, then we will vote upon it. So, but because Senator Trillanes brought this up, I'm forced to also give my own observations. No? Every time that we look at Mr. Motobato's testimony, he jumps from pretending to have personal knowledge, going to hearsay. The best example dyan is yung kay Mr. Macdum. Sa affidavit po, pinakita na rin po ito ni Senator Trillanes, ang sabi niya, ang sinabi po niya doon, ang sinabi po niya dito ay terrorist lang. Terrorist lang. Tinanong ko siya, asawa yon ng asawa ng pinsan mo. Magpinsan yung asawa nyo. Papatayin mo, sinabi terrorist lang, walang paliwanag. That is contrary to human experience. Kung magpinsan ang asawa namin ni Senator Manny Pacquiao at balak akong gulpihin, hindi nga patayin, gulpihin, it is but human experience, it is but logical that Senator Pacquiao will tell his wife, pakisabihan mo nga yung pinsan mo, di ko na yung kaya yung mukha ni Alan na yung Google Paying ko na yan. Unless it happens spontaneously na magkatabi kami, bigla na lang nainis, wag naman sana mangyari, Senator Pacquiao. No? But it is against human nature. So what does the affidavit said? The affidavit said, pinaliwanag ni Mr. Motobato na siya ang nagbomba ng moske, which he conveniently forgot, even if paulit-ulit ang question ko. Doon po sa Davao Death Squad, doon po nung tinanong siya at present siya sa unang hearing, nung palang pong unang punta niya sa hearing, ang sabi niya, at saka pagka 1998, sa pagka-umpisang pag-mayor ni Mayor Duterte, kinuha ako sa batalyon dahil maganda naman iyong performance sa Kapgu. Tapos pagkuha niya, dinala niya sa Davao City at nagtagtag siya ng grupo ng Lambada Boys. Hindi po yun ang sinabi niya sa affidavit niya. Sa affidavit niya, ang sinabi niya, I was only a farmer in Davao. Growing up, when I was in my 20s, I realized I need to make a better living, which is substantial, Mr. President, because he testified 3,000 lang daw sweldo niya. Pero namili siya na maging mass murderer. Ano pong kasunod? At the same time, I was attracted to the power, influence of people working for the local government because they were untouchable. It was then that I decided to join the Davao City government through the civilian security force. With your patience, Mr. President, kay Richard King, eto po ang sabi niya, they kept telling me to confess that I was the one who killed Mr. King. But I never did. Tama po si Senator Trillanes doon. Hindi niya claim na siya. Pero ano po sabi niya dito? Because I knew who killed him. I know SPO2, Renate Medina killed Mr. Richard King. Nobody else in Davao will take a project of this scale and against a person of this level but SPO2, Renate Medina. Mr. President, what did he say in the September 15 hearing? Nagbago. Sabi niya, ang nag-utos niyan ay si Paulo Duterte. Ma'am, ang nag-utos niyan ay si Paulo Duterte, etc. Sa McDonald's. Tapos ito sabi niya, word for word to, page 50 to 52 ng transcript. Pagkatapos yung iyong tumira kay Richard King ay inyong kasamahan ko na rebel returnee na may kasamang pulis doon. Motobato, sila si Joel Tapales alias Turco at saka si Luloy Gabas, ma'am. So Mr. President, the presentation seems to paste things together to make it appear that the inconsistencies were minor. No, sir. When you change the names of the person who killed, when you change how they were killed, kay Mr. Macdumpo, ang sinabi niya, at paulit-ulit ako, tinanong ko siya, nilaslas niyo ba liig? Sabi niya, hindi. Tinanong ko, tinadtad ba? Hindi. Pero sa affidavit po, or at least ganun po ang concept ng pagtatanong. Sa pagdating po sa affidavit, ang sagot po sa affidavit, nilaslas po nila. So it's very different. That's why my next question, sir, to you, Mr. President, Senator Trillanes, you keep mentioning that if the inconsistencies are minor, that is okay. Are you referring to a Supreme Court decision?
Mr. President, my privileged speech was very clear. I presented my case, and I believe the information that we were able to gather merited further investigation. That's why I made the motion. Now, I respect the views of the gentleman, and he can oppose all he wants. But at the end of the day, that motion remains to be addressed. And no matter what I do, I'm confident, and no matter what we can come up with, I am confident that we won't be able to convince the gentleman anyway. So might as well get this over and done with by dividing the House.
Mr. President, hindi naman siguro tama yung hit and run dito sa Senado. Yes, he might not be able to convince me, but what about Senator Soto? What about Senator J.V. Hercito behind him? What about the public that is listening? Yung ibig sabihin hit and run, hindi naman pwedeng yung isa magsasalita and then hindi natin tatapusin yung interpellation, doon na kayagad tayo sa motion. That has been the tradition. Kaya nga po na nabuo din yung na kahit nasa yung favorite po na sabihin ni Brother Eddie na tatay po ni Senator Joel Villanueva na kahit sa Plaza Miranda tayo magdebate. Pero dito din po nanggaling sa Senado yun at saka sa Plaza Miranda because walang umaatras po sa debate. What happens po, Mr. President, with your patient, Senator Trillanes? Labas natin lahat ng arguments. Then let's be the people in the gallery. Nahiya ako sa mga beauty queen na nasa likod ko. We are here to honor them. I want to wrap up and finish, but they will understand that this is of grave national importance, Mr. President. Mr. President, in GR number 179497, People of the Philippines versus Mamarungkas. This is a recent case, 2012. But if you Google po, napakaraming kaso nito. This is from one of my favorite justices, no, Justice Castillo. But there are Justice Del Castillo, sorry. There are many other cases that say practically the same thing. Ito po ang sabi ng Supreme Court. The perceived inconsistency on whether Gepayo knows Ampatuan even before the incident is inconsequential as to discredit the credibility of Gepayo's testimony. The inconsistencies pointed out by the appellant pertains only to the collateral or trivial matters and has no substantial effect on the nature of the offense. In fact, it even signifies that the witness was neither coached nor was lying on the witness stand. What matters is there is no inconsistencies. Mr. President, this is the important part. In Gepayo's complete and vivid narration as far as the principal occurrence and positive identification as Ampatuan as one of the principal as assailants are concerned. The court has held, although there may be inconsistencies in the testimony of witness on minor details, they do not impair the credibility where the consistency is relating into the principal occurrence and positive identification of the assailant. Meaning, Mr. President, pag yung positive identification at yung occurrence ng crime, sino, saan, paano naganap, sino kasali, paano mo pinatay, hindi minor inconsistency yun. At tad-tad ng inconsistencies ang testimonya ni Mr. Matubato. In fact, hindi ko na nga iisa-isahin dito. Even nung sinabi niyang sa McDonald's, hearsay na nga, mali pa. Kasi hindi naman siya pumatay, narinig niya lang sa iba, tapos mali pa. Hindi pa dun sa kung saan pinatay. Mr. President, yung masking tape, I just want to mention that dahil ako nagdala nito. You know, if you talk to a graphic artist, for example, especially olden days, nung hindi pa sa computer, sa akin, especially nung elementary school ako, pag sinabing Mongol number 2 or pencil, lahat naman sa akin na may lead pencil eh. Di ba? Pero dun po, sa yun ang trabaho nila. Dun po, sa mga artist, may iba-ibang number yan. May iba-ibang kapal. May iba-ibang klaseng pens, pencils, etc. No? Why? That is their trade. So if you look at the killings that are now going on, where people are taped from head to toe or just their arms, it is the same as some drug cartels. I will not tell you the nationality. Yung ibang mga ambassadors umaangal na sa atin because it is linked with their drug cartels, no? But my point, Mr. President, is this. Kung tatlo kami ni Senator Manny Pacquiao dito, ang killer, hindi pwedeng nasa kotse mo may masking tape ka parate. Hindi pwedeng may lime ka kasi kung maghuhukay ka, lalagyan mo ng ano yun eh. May mga chemical or may mga lalagay dyan para hindi bumaho. Or right now, grabe na yung DNA, so may ilalagay ka dyan. If you're a professional killer, DDS is claimed to be professional killers, right? Remember, this isn't a homicide or one murder. They are claiming that this is organized crime. So what do I mean, Mr. President? Tatlo kami ni Senator Pacquiao, Senator Joel. Sabi, pare, may papatayin tayo. Bumili ka na ng tape. Alam na namin kung anong klaseng tape. Pag pumunta si Alan sa National Bookstore at sabihin ko masking tape at babalik ako at ipapakita ko kay Manny Pacquiao ang masking tape, ang sabihin niya sa akin, ang bobo mo naman, Alan. Kasi yung masking tape, madaling maputol yan. Ang masking tape, ganito yan. Ang masking tape, ganyan. Kung may matalas yan, kung may ganyan yan, malalagari, matatanggal yan. Ang ginagamit namin dyan, duct tape o mask or packing tape. So, kahit grade 1 ka, Mr. President, I work with a lot of professionals. No? Yung gumagawa ng sapatos ko galing Marikina, professional yan. Yung pakong bakya na ginagamit, halimbawa, at kailan gagamitin, kailan yung pandikit, anong klaseng pandikit, di ba? Yung pong pag ikaw po ay edad na natin, Mr. President, at hindi ko alam kung ilan sa atin dito ang nagpapakulay ng buhok, whether katulad ng style ni Joel Villanueva, kung natural, or ako na may puti-puti, at i-admit ko, minsan pinapaitim ko ng konti. May pangalan lahat yan, Mr. President. Hindi ko pwedeng sabihin sa gagawa, kulay lang. Di ba? May technical yan, Mr. President. So wag natin po sabihin pa ulit-ulit, grade 1 lang yan, hindi alam. Yung tao po is 57 years old, claims to be a killer, claims to be a professional. Let's not, every time he makes a mistake, let's not say grade 1 lang yan. Napakaraming magaling na tao na grade 1, hindi nakapag-aral. One of my idols na hindi nakatapos ng college, I think high school, si Senator and then Secretary Ople. And he was one of the best labor secretaries and senators this nation has, no? Bill Gates, we can name 1 million people, thousands of people. So let's not make that as an excuse, Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President, let me just interject because the gentleman is saying that this is a debate, but it has been a monologue since around 4:20. Now, I'm confused now. He started with the masking tape, then he jumped to his parlor, whatever, then to Senate President Ople. Where is the debate?
I'll show him where the debate
Okay.
is, Mr. President. The debate is when I ask him a question, but he keeps answering me na emotion na. So napipilitan ako na sabihin na lang ang point ko diretso. But if the gentleman will graciously answer my questions, I still have a lot of questions here that are relevant and to the point, Mr. President. I don't think it's parliamentary feasible for one senator to stand up and expect na wala na lang magtatanong and we just take their statement hook, line, and sinker, Mr. President. Ngayon, having said that, I apologize for my style. Kanya-kanyang style kasi iyan eh. So, if I ask the question, sir, but you keep answering me, na doon na lang tayo sa motion. So, I'll go to my next question. Are you saying that there is state-sponsored extrajudicial killings?
Mr. President, that's why we need to investigate to rule out any possibility that President Duterte is not involved or was not involved with the DDS during his time as mayor. We are not in a position to make any judgments either way. But I believe, based on what I have presented, it merits at least a deeper look. Because not only the whole country is watching, but the whole world is watching our next steps. So that's the point of the motion that I was making, Mr. President. I'm not here to oust anybody. Well, not yet, at least. But I'm just here proposing to investigate a very serious matter. And I believe the gentleman has a bottomless pit of wisdom, and I'm going to concede that he is even wiser than me many times over. But again, let's get to the point. Now, if the gentleman keeps on saying that I would want to run away, if you would recall, when I sat beside him during the hearing, he was the one who ran away. Now, unless you want me to go near you again, just say so,
Mr. President,
Mr. President.
for the record, no, kaibigan ko siya, nagulat ako, ba't niya tinignan yung mata ko ng gano'n, para niya ako kakainin nung sinabi niya, hindi kita popormahin dito. Hindi ko na sinabi sa media, but sabihin ko na rin ngayon dahil briningap niya. Sabi niya sa akin, pa-Bible ka pa. Evil naman pinoprotektahan mo. But for the record, anywhere, anytime, di kita nang aatrasan eh. Pero ang sabi mo kasi, you're willing na mag-debate, kaya debate tayo. Kaharap natin tao, Senado to, sawang-sawa na ako, basahin sa dyaryo, sabihin sa atin, ang galing ng mga Sanlonga, ang galing ng mga Tanyada, ang galing ng mga Diokno. Ba't nagagalingan din naman ako sa nandito? That's why umurong ako away from you kasi ayaw mo ako tigilan. Trina-trash talk mo ako, ayaw ko na magkaabutan tayo dahil ang pagkaalam ko, para tayong magkapatid at magkaibigan tayo. But now, if you're going to tell me, lalapitan mo ako dito, lapitan mo ako yakapin, yayakapin kita. Pero lapitan mo ako na hamunin mo ako, hindi kita aatrasan. Hindi naman problema yun, Senator Trillanes. I do not know where this hate is coming from. We are from different sides of the political aisle now, but I never treated you as an enemy. I've always treated you as a friend. So I just want to finish, Mr. President, my questions. Because he was given the opportunity to discuss the merits of Mr. Matubato's questions. Can I not be given the opportunity to test his thesis? Do I want a fight? Of course not, Senator Trillanes. I still think that there are many fights in the future na magiging magkaalyado tayo. But I do not know why there is animosity just because we're in different sides now, sir. Does that mean that we cannot do this as friends? Ibig sabihin, pag iba ang tingin mo sa presidente, iba tingin ko, magkaaway at magkalaban na tayo?
Mr. President, does the gentleman sense any animosity in my tone of voice? I believe I am at my calmest. Relatively speaking, this is could be one of the best behaviors I ever had in the...
Mr. President, Judas kissed Jesus Christ. Judas kissed Jesus Christ. Would Jesus Christ tell him, Judas, wala kang animosity? So that's what I'm saying, Mr. President. I was asking the questions, siya po ang sumagot na you want me to come over here. I want to have a discussion with you. We can sit down.
To calm us down further, if there is no objection, the chair would like to suspend the session.